My name is Rachel Dixon. I am a massage therapist on Nantucket. I have been doing massage for over 20 years, and in these 20 years, I have really focused on chronic pain and chronic stress and a little bit of chronic disease that's come in with that. Right now, I am not able to massage, so I am doing more of the educational pieces. But these pieces that I'm introducing have to do with a certification I have in postural therapy. And postural therapy is sort of like the vitamins of movement. So if you went to a personal trainer, that would be like the macronutrients, like the protein and the proteins and the fats and the carbohydrates, where the postural movement is more about those little pieces that sort of create your structural basis, that then when you go to do more personal training, which is more exercising your cardiovascular and your big muscles, that's the difference between sort of the postural work and the personal training. Today's class is on static back, which is one of my favorite Egoscue exercises, and functional breathing. And static back is the #1 go-to, it's called e-cise through Egoscue, that has helped people's backs. And right now, if people have a sore back, they cannot go to the chiropractor, you cannot go to your massage therapist, and you probably can't even go see your doctor or physical therapist. So I thought it was rather relevant for these times. So static back is fairly helpful to you if you have a sore back or a disc injury. You have a forward slumped posture, which tends to look like sort of this a little bit. Most of us have some element of that, okay? If you have a pelvis or shoulder disparity, and I'll get up and show you that in just a second, or you want to relax and improve your posture at the end of the day. So what I mean by a pelvis disparity is, let's see, okay, so if you might have one pelvis and shoulder that are very slightly different from each other from an up and down position, and or you might have one hip slightly forward and one pelvis slightly forward, okay? So that just means that you're slightly different in your positions. The other thing about static back is it's like sitting, but in an unweighted position. So as I'm sitting right here, my entire back is slightly compressing. In the static back, when you are lying on the ground, you're not. If you opened up your picture, you would see a picture of me and a picture in Egoscue, and I'm gonna demonstrate it in just a minute, but I'm gonna go over breathing first. But static back, so 2 examples of clients that static back has helped. It's helped multiple people, so I have an older woman with over 65, okay, but she's actually quite a bit over 65, but I have an older client who has a fairly significant scoliosis. She also loves gardening, and she has shoulder issues that are not really going to get better at this point. And she loves her gardening, but at the end of the day, she's really sore. So at the end of the day, if she goes and does static back, the scoliosis, it sort of reminds the scoliosis to go back a little bit. It's not going to correct it entirely, but she finds that she maintains really well as long as she does static back. Another client that static back has been really helpful for is I had a 17-year-old boy with very significant back discomfort. So he was a very, very athletic, all top Nantucket student athlete, but he had a very tight back, and he had a very heavy backpack, and he slumped in his seat all the time. So he spent most of his time kind of slumped in poor posture, and then he went out and pushed himself to the max athletically. And static back with breathing really helped his back significantly. So these are different examples of where static back has been helpful to my clients. Static back is also similar to an exercise called supine 90-90, which is one of the positions that is ideal to breathe in. And this class was really going to be about static back and some exercises you could do for your low back, or your back, but your low back, but also about breathing. So in COVID-19 issues, better breathing is not a bad thing, but I'm going to talk a little bit about functional breathing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about functional breathing, and then we'll get into the different exercises, including the static back. So most people, when they come in also with sore necks, I will ask them to take a deep breath. And most of us will take up like this, where our chest rises up and goes down. Now, those are using your secondary breathing muscles. It's meant for fight or flight. It's made for, if you can't get a deep breath, we will go into irritating the neck, but being able to take a breath that way, okay? It is not the ideal diaphragmatic breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing is a little bit more, it's a little bit more where you had your hand on your chest and your hand on the belly, and you were taking a deep breath. I can't do it and talk at the same time, but my lower hand would expand more than my upper hand, okay? So the breath comes in, it's going to go down, it's going to go out the front, it's also going to go out the side, and it's going to go into the back. Most of us, if we breathe better, we will go into the stomach. We do not always go into the side, and we rarely go into the back. I had taken a course called Restorative Breathing through LOIS, and I'm going to go over her basic repertoire of ideal breathing, but several things about where ideal breathing could come in play is when you breathe diaphragmatically, you can take yourself from a stressed or sympathetic state into an unstressed or parasympathetic state. So a lot of people are stressed lately, or they're stressed in general, and most people will be told, just stop being stressed. And that is easier said than done. So to do breathing exercises that can help reduce your stress can be extremely useful to addressing stress. Also, when you do breathing exercises, it's going to work on thoracic stability. So, for example, for my athlete that improved by doing static back with breathing, he didn't have a lot of stability in his core, okay? And by breathing ideally in the static back, which was correcting his thoracic position, he improved his thoracic stability. So this is going to help our core, and it's also going to help de-stress us. This diaphragmatic breathing will improve our vagal nerve, which I don't know how many people are aware of this, but it's very important in the de-stressing. That's why breathing actually helps. Okay, so ideal breathing is going to be, it's all in your little pamphlet, but breathing in and out silently through your nose. And it's very important here, but you want to make your exhale longer than your inhale. And it's important, as this is how to be in the less stressed state, okay? And you can also hum on the exhale. So when we breathe in, oxygen comes into, or oxygenated air comes into our lungs. When we exhale, this is actually how our body, or where our body absorbs the oxygen. So we always want to make our exhale longer than our inhale. The ideal position for breathing is also going to have your tongue on the roof of your mouth, your teeth apart, your lips together, your eyes level and open, and your neck and shoulders at rest. Now, I teach a whole breathing class. It goes into lots of level of breathing, but it is surprising how many people have trouble just breathing with a long inhale, a tongue on the roof of the mouth, teeth apart, lips together, eyes level, and neck and shoulders at rest. So let me show you what that would look like, okay? I'm not perfect at it. I'm much better at teaching the exercises. But I have my hand on the top, I have my hand on the bottom. My tongue is going to be resting on the roof of my mouth. So it's not going to be pressing against my teeth. My upper palate is right here, and my tongue is going to be resting right up in here. We can access our vagal nerve right here, so our tongue being able to rest right here is really going to stabilize the vagal nerve. Okay, so I'm going to just breathe for a moment. I might end up having to talk through it, which means I'm not breathing, but. And then when we get to the top of the inhale, you can pause, and then you can even hum back out. And then you can swallow. So many different ways of being able to work on this, but you can focus on practicing breathing in the sitting up position, the standing up position, and the lying down position, which is similar to the static back. Anyone have any questions to start with? Because I know the breathing thing is very different for a lot of people.
When you do the inhale, do you rest there for any length of time before you exhale, or do you just inhale and then exhale? That's question one.
Okay, so you can pause at the top. So in the ideal world, okay, you're going to have as long an inhale as you can, and as you work on it, it can get longer and longer and longer, right? So we have a nice long inhale, and then you kind of like pause for a second.
I see.
Then you can exhale down and or hum it down.
Yes, right.
If you hum it down, it adds a little vibration into it. So you can hum it down, and then you can either pause and or you can pause and swallow. When you pause and swallow, you actually are settling the nervous system a little bit more. So this is one way when we are working with de-stressing our body, we're also working to regulate our nervous system, particularly the parasympathetic one. So a couple of these little things, the humming is helpful, the pause at the top, and then coming back down. Now, some people have problems with nasal breathing because they have allergies, or they have polyps, or they have a deviated septum. There are some issues that get in the way, but the ideal breathing includes being able to breathe through your nose. It's going to be the proper humidification. It's going to be the proper, it introduces less germs to our cells, and it makes our heart work a little less hard. If we're constantly mouth breathing, our heart has to work a little harder for our body. However, there's all sorts of different ways that you can work with stuff depending on what your issues are, but this is ideal breathing. Do you have any more questions?
The other one was, if this is an exercise, then how many times would you do it, say?
Okay, so if you had more time and you could do it more, then I would do that. But they actually have like 3 cycles of like a breath in, pause, and exhale.
Right.
3 times. It is what sets the nervous system.
I see. So it would be three intervals of 3. I mean, units of 3.
Well, and you could do 5, and that's fine. It's getting to 3 that is the start.
Okay.
But I say that, and ideally, you should breathe like this most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. So, but you can stop and make an activity of it, and I would do it at least 3 times. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I notice my stomach muscles get tight sometimes, or like right now I can consciously breathe into my diaphragm, but it's almost like I run out of space. Is there anything I can do to relax that, or is that what the exercise does?
Well, do you feel like it's your diaphragm, which is a muscle right here, stopping you? Or, okay, it's your diaphragm? Okay. So when you are okay, so take a deep breath. Okay, so you did a good job not going up into here, okay? But probably with practicing this, it will get better, okay? Another thing that one could do, and we can always talk afterwards, is you'll probably be a little bit better in the different positions, like in the static back, okay? You also can give yourself a little bit better feedback. So if you had your hand, you know, on your stomach, particularly in maybe the lying down position, it might be a little bit easier. A very small beanbag, like a couple of ounces to a half of a pound down here, can sometimes give us a little bit of feedback where we'll be able to sense it a little bit better. But the diaphragm itself, when you take an inhale, I'm not great on the functionality of it, but it drops like this and then it comes back up, okay? So the reality is most of us lock down our diaphragm all the time, and then we're breathing, lifting up right here, okay? One of the issues where this is tied in with core is because our true core is really the diaphragm and the pelvic floor on the bottom, the deep abdominal muscles on the front, and our deep back muscles on the back. So the reality is they're all related to each other, and they all work. If we never let go of our diaphragm, we never let go of our pelvic floor, and we typically overuse or underuse our back muscles. So this is where breathing ideally is going to play in with better core stability, but practicing is helpful. We are locking down our diaphragm typically because we're used to that, and that is one of our go-to ways of creating core stability for ourselves, but it's not ideal, and it can't hold up forever. So practicing it will be typically helpful. Sometimes people manually go in and release it. I will, if I was working with clients, I would sometimes manually release it, and people would find trigger points, but simply breathing can be really helpful. Okay, any more questions before I go into the exercises? Okay, so with static back, it is probably good for everybody. Okay, I really can't think of anything that it would be bad for. To be effective, you really need to be able to be on a firm enough surface that the gravity of your body on a firm surface is going to make a difference to derotate the body. If you were on a bed, the bed is soft, it's not going to be as effective. Not everyone can get down to the ground easily. So in a situation where it was not safe for you to get down to the ground, I would either not do this one, or I would do it near where someone could help you, or you could potentially have a firmer surface on your bed. Like if you had a board that you could put on your bed, and then you could just sit on it and get on it. It would be safer. And or, you know, something like a very solid big coffee table that you could sit on, that would also be better. But it does require, it is a passive exercise, but it does require a firm surface for the gravity. And you can have mats over it, but it needs a firm surface for gravity to derotate your body. The next two exercises, which is the static groin stretch and the air bench. The static groin stretch is going to be more helpful if you have a tight hip flexor, and not everyone here is going to have a tight hip flexor. Joanne, I'm just looking at you and thinking that you probably don't have a tight hip flexor.
What is it?
Your hip flexor is right here in the front, okay? If you were to sit, okay, and you had a really arched back, you probably have a tight hip flexor. If you sit more in a C and you have more of a C-curved back, you would probably benefit from a few other exercises. So if you ever want to contact me, I can tell you a couple of other things that would be helpful, but the static back would still be helpful to you, okay? If you lie on the ground with your feet straight out and you feel an arch in your back, the static groin stretch would be helpful to you, okay? If your low back is already into the ground, it's not going to make a difference. It's not going to hurt you, but it's not going to necessarily make a difference for you. And the the air bench is challenging for some people and not challenging for others. But what people are surprised at is this exercise is to push your low back into the wall, which people don't sort of realize.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to go down very far. This exercise is asking your low back to release while I'm asking my legs to turn on, okay?
Mhm.
So any questions before I go to demonstrate the exercises for you guys? Okay, so I'm just gonna try to get it set up and then make sure I'm in the view. Let me make sure that, okay. So a static back, with any of these, you want to be able to get down to the ground safely, okay? And then I'm just going to lie here with ideally my legs at, can you guys see me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so ideally I'm relatively right angles. I know I'm not exactly perfect here. And I'm just going to lie here for like 5-10 minutes. What is going to happen is the weight of the ground and the weight of my body together, if one pelvis is higher than the other, it's going to typically even out. And the same thing happens with the shoulders. And this is also an excellent exercise for really rounded shoulders because it's going to push against those shoulders and it should level everything out. So I would typically lie here for 5, 10, 15. Some people lie longer. If your back hurts, this is the way that you can sit up without loading your back. So this tends to be very helpful for people with disc injuries. If your shoulders were so rounded that when you come up to here, your head is angled like this, okay? We would want to put a little pillow so that my head is neutral like this. Over time, as that upper back starts to let go, I could take that pillow away because ideally I don't want to have a pillow there. I want my body to be lying in this position, but you just get to lie here. So it's a very passive exercise, but people absolutely love it because it's very, very effective. It's actually doing a lot of work where I don't have to do anything. So you would just lie here. Now, I am also stacked up where everything in my thoracic area is stacked properly on top of each other. So when you're in this position and then you work on breathing, you're not only stacking your body properly, okay, which is the proper position for your diaphragm, but then you are setting the stable thoracic on top of breathing. So, and I always love doing more than one thing at the same time. So if you had, one hand here just to remind you that this is the one not to work, and one hand here, you could do this. Or you could put a very light, like bean bag on your lower belly to remind your lower belly to diaphragmatically breathe. And or remember that it's not just breathing into the low belly. You're ideally going to breathe out to the side as well. But let me just show you what it might look like. So I'm going to keep my eyes horizontal, looking up at the ceiling, okay? And then I'm going to let my body just unrotate. I'm going to think about my lower belly here, and I'm going to breathe. Any questions so far? Okay, so if you were someone, so when you're lying here in the static back, you will also most likely start feeling like you have a little bit of a curve in your low back, okay? If you were someone with a fairly large curve in your low back and you had low back pain, and it's not going to hurt if you don't have low back pain, but you can come here, and then we're going to come in this position, and I'm going to leave one leg up, and I'm going to have one leg just resting down here on the ground. And at this point, you don't have to specifically breathe, but I'm going to just lie here, and what I'm looking for is the muscle that's right in here, the hip flexor. One hip flexor attaches in at the discs of your back. The one that it's probably more affecting is the iliacus right in here. And I'm just going to let this hip flexor relax while I'm taking this hip out of it. And you would just lie here for a little bit of time. Now, one thing you ideally want is not this leg sort of like flopping out to the side. I kind of want to be relaxed, but in a position that the leg is upright. And if I can't do that naturally, I might put a weight or something to keep my ankle from flopping like this. So then you would just lie here for a period of time. You could do it 5-10 minutes, but what you also could do is you could lie here and say, you know, I'm feeling a big arch in this back. And then as I lie here, my body's going to unrotate my back. And so as this side sort of seems to relax, you can then decide to go to do the other side. So then the other side would look like this, which I don't know if you can see my leg. Yeah, my leg is popping out just a little bit, but now this leg is out of it, and I'm going to relax on this one. And then again, you can do it for a period of time, 5-10 minutes, or you could do it as long as you felt your body unrotate. Some people are very aware of feeling these unrotations in the bodies, and other ones aren't. Ooh, sorry, time is getting low. Let me get into the last exercise and then see if you guys have questions. So some people are really aware of how their body is unrotating, and they can feel it. It'll feel like different pressure, and other people aren't. Given some time, your body will probably do it even without you being aware. So air bench is good to wear shoes, okay? But I'm going to come right here, okay? And I'm going to press up against the wall. And you always want to make sure that your hips are over your knees or higher up than my knees, but that my knees are not over my toes. And then surprisingly, I'm pushing my low back into the wall, which is actually going to push my head away. And it's okay for your head. You don't have to have your head up here, okay? But the point is I'm taking my low back out of and I'm asking my quads to kick in. Many people with low backs have overactive back and underactive legs. So then you would be in this position for, it could be 10 seconds, it could be 1 minute or 2 minutes. But essentially what we're looking to do is turn on our legs and sort of get both sides to work. All right, any questions?
With the last exercise that you did, you don't slide up and down the wall, do you?
Nope.
Well, you have to get into that position, so you do have to slide a bit.
You have to get into the position, okay? If you weren't sure that you were stable enough to do it, okay, have something underneath, like a
stool.
Like a stool or something, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to go down very far. You always want to have your hips higher up than your knees, but you could go down a little bit. What you're looking for is to push your low back into the wall, and get your legs to kick in a little bit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
How often do you think you would do these?
With most people, if this was the little vitamins that your body needs, it would probably be every day. And with people who have an extremely sore back, like a very bad disc, they might end up doing it for a really long period of time, because with a lot of people, sitting is very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And to get down on the ground, it takes the pressure off of that disc. So a lot of people, if they're in a real acute phase, would actually choose to do it for a very long period of time. With most people, they would do mostly, say, static back and 1 or 2 exercises, and then they would do it every single day as sort of a little micronutrient of the movement that their body wasn't getting throughout the day. When I look at you just sitting there, there is another exercise called upper spinal. If you have a relatively healthy back, meaning twisting is not a problem for you, I would say that upper spinal floor twist and hip crossover stretch in Egoscue would also be really beneficial for you.
Okay, because I'm doing the yin with Paul,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot of like twisting legs and
Yep.
doing that. I think I'm just sitting so much because we're in a house just sitting all day too.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
starting to get the back.
Excellent. And also, some of the points that we made in the first class would be helpful to you. We talk a lot about when people are sitting all the time.
Oh,
And ways of changing up movement, or how to set up the computer right so we're sitting a little bit better, and things like that. So,
okay. All right, thank you.
Could
All right.
you clarify the second exercise that you did?
Mhm.
With one leg out and the other leg bent. You said something about the hip. I didn't quite understand that. That do you tend to put your weight on one leg as opposed to the other?
No,
I didn't understand
so-
what you said about that.
So what I was saying was that when we had one leg up and one leg down,
Yeah, right,
one leg was being stretched and the other
Right.
one wasn't.
right.
In your case, just looking at what I can see of your upper body, I am
Mhm.
not thinking that that one is an exercise that you need. But
It looks so comfortable.
yeah, they are very comfortable.
They're very comfortable exercises.
Yeah, most people really, really like the static back.
Yeah, yeah. It's wonderful. It's no exercise.
Exactly, and it's actually very effective with gravity. It's burning on that.
Right, sure.
Yep. All
Of
right.
course, gravity is not a good help for old people. I mean, that's our worst enemy.
I'll tell you what, it's not gravity. It's losing the muscle ability to get back
Right,
up.
of course. And the connective tissues.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
All right.
But we do what we
What
can.
is that block you're using?
Pardon?
What is
This
that
is
block
called-
you're
this
using?
is so this was called, so my training was through Egoscue. I'm not part of their franchise, so it's Egoscue University, and this is an Egoscue block. It is actually not my favorite thing to use. In my office, I have a chair, which is just perfect. So I almost never actually have used this block, but I'm now in my house and I brought this block in. So you can always buy the block, but with most people, there is a chair in their house, or, you know,
Yeah.
that works perfectly for it.
Okay.
So, all right. Any other questions? Feel free. On Friday, I'm going to be doing a class on shoulders. We can do a little
Okay.
tiny bit of an element of the neck, but perhaps next week, if you guys were interested in a neck one, I could do something for the neck as well. So,
Definitely.
Very good.
all right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Feel free to contact me if you have questions.